Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. And today I'm Ev McLaughlin.
I'm Sophia Jenkins.
And I'm Irvin Cateman. Ev, who are you on other days?
It depends. But today I'm Ev McLaughlin. We're going to maintain some mystery there.
Excellent. Well, our guest today is a returning guest and a friend of mine, Sam Amon. Hello again, Sam.
Hey, how are you guys?
Hi, Sam.
Yeah. We clearly need at least one Sam on this podcast at any given time.
Because they're the best. Sams are the best.
Exactly. So this Sam is filling in today. So Sam, in case listeners don't remember you or are confusing the myriad Sams we have on this show, why don't you remind us about yourself?
Well, I'm Sam. My Hogwarts house is Slytherpuff. I can't decide which one I am. My journey to Hogwarts, or Potter, we were assigned to read it in the 5th grade, the first book, and I didn't want to, and no one did, so we didn't read it. But then in the 6th grade, my teacher read the 3rd book to us while we were allowed to, draw or do homework and stuff like that. And then towards the end, I remember, no one drawing, no one doing homework, everyone's focused completely on her. So after the 3rd book, I was in the hospital for a week, and I read 3 again, then 1, then 2, then 1, 2, and 3. And then I've been hooked ever since.
Aww.
And yep. Favorite book? I'll have to say it's book 6 is the best written in my opinion, but my personal favorite is book 4. For the longest time, It was book 3. But as I got older and reread the series, book 4 just holds so much special place in my heart. Favorite character is Ginny. I always want to know more and talk constantly about James Potter, but I am Ginny's #1 fan. And that's it.
Excellent.
I'm a big fan of Ginny too, I have to say.
She's the best.
She's great.
She really is.
And luckily, she has a small role to play in today's episode.
Yeah, she does.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, for episode number 38, we've gathered to discuss the 141st, say that 5 times fast, chapter of the Harry Potter series, Half-Blood Prince, which is also chapter 9 within the book itself, which, after reading it again recently, I'm now thinking of as a cozy slice of life chapter. So as always, we encourage you to read the chapter before listening. So, as a Patreon supporter shout out today, it's actually quite special because we are giving huge thanks to Sam Omen over on Patreon, who bought this round of drinks at the pub. And do you know where Sam is? Sam is here with us in the pub. So yay! Thank you, Sam. Thank you for buying us a round of drinks and being with us.
Of course.
While we have these drinks. So this is great.
It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, very much so. And if you, dear listener, would like to buy us a round at the pub, head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks. That's with number 3. To sign up, we're offering loads of bonus content, chats with the hosts, and on-episode shoutouts to our patrons. We would really appreciate your help in keeping the lights on at the 3 Broomsticks, and we always need more drinks because we talk a lot.
Amen.
So the more drinks you get us, the longer we can talk about Harry Potter.
Ev, is that a threat or a promise? Because I feel like some listeners might be like, okay, no more drinks for them. These are already 3 hours long.
I don't know. I like long episodes. I think they're the best.
Same here.
So from my point of view, that's a good thing. So I guess that depends on your point of view. But yeah.
Okay, well, Sam, we're glad you're getting your money's worth.
For sure. So thank you for coming as a guest and also for supporting us.
You're welcome.
And now let's offer a toast to the comments on episode 35. This episode was our last titular chapter. That's been a mini-series we've been doing this year. It was Order of the Phoenix, the chapter Order of the Phoenix. And so we raise our glass to a commenter whose name also will show up in today's episode. No need to call me Sir Professor, which is a fantastic name that we're going to talk all about.
Is that why you picked it?
No, I picked it because it's an amazing comment. And because it was a very good name. But they said, something of a hot take I have. I like Lupin, but I do think his relevance to the story is largely overestimated and blown out of proportion by the fandom. Sure, he was the first, quote, good DADA teacher they ever had, but I don't think his relevance to the plot extends very far beyond Prisoner of Azkaban. If he never appeared again a la Quirrell, not saying he needed to die, but if he just went away, would the story really change all that much? We see him fight with Sirius, fight with Harry, fight with Snape, and he by and large loses all of these fights, so in the end, what does it really matter? I think he may have been a better godfather than Sirius, up for discussion, but once Sirius enters the picture and proves his innocence to Harry, I think it was over for Lupin. And I like this. That was a spicy take.
That is interesting, yes. I after thinking about various teaching methods, which kind of comes up in the chapter that we're going to discuss later, I'm really not that sold on Lupin being a particularly amazing teacher. I mean, he's better than Quirrell, but that's not very hard. But that's not really the point of this comment, so...
I mean, I have opinions on that part, but I would say if you're thinking strictly plot, then Lupin is not necessary. But I think for sort of emotional, I think that if you're thinking about more his like emotional role in the story, I think he still plays a very important role. In part just as like another connection of Harry to his father. And, like, it's just like he has a different perspective. He has a unique perspective that I think is helpful for Harry throughout the series.
I mean, he's a very interesting supporting character.
Yeah, so I think that sort of... We needed a supporting character like Lupin in the story. We needed someone who cared about Harry, whom Harry cared about. We needed, an adult Harry could turn to. We needed someone Harry could bounce off of in Deathly Hallows to show how he's grown. I feel like we needed someone to do what Lupin did, just in terms of showing who Harry is and developing Harry as a character. Whether that person had to be Lupin, I feel like it didn't have to be, but since we already had Lupin, sort of may as well.
I will say, as I've reread the series and got older, my love for Lupin has kind of faded a little bit, and I don't know if the whole Godfather thing, because I'm thinking back to Lupin becoming a father and his reaction to that. So because everything, although helping Harry grow and everything, that I don't recall anything him playing a significant role past Prisoner of Azkaban. So
I think that he plays an interesting role in one of the parts that a couple of parts that I could think of Lupin playing a pretty interesting role is in Order of the Phoenix, when Harry goes into Snape's memory and sees his father bullying Snape, and then he goes to talk to Sirius and Lupin, I think that that's a pretty strong moment, and that what Lupin and Sirius say about his father in that moment, I think if it was just Sirius, I don't think that it would have had the same weight for Harry. I think sort of Lupin being there too and being I was dumb too. I didn't stand up to them. I look back on that time and kind of realize that I didn't do right either. But that doesn't mean that we're terrible people or that your dad's a terrible person. I think that he has weight there. And I think also in Half-Blood Prince, I really like the conversation that Harry has with Lupin about Snape, where Snape is I neither like nor dislike Severus. I think that's really strong. And I think that overall, Lupin just has a very balanced feeling. Like, he just has like a very like balanced point of view often that is different than a lot of the other adults that Harry encounters. That he like talks to Harry like, you know, like an adult, and, you know, has a more balanced point of view and has some more mature ways of interpreting.
I just want to add that when I read Order of the Phoenix, I always read Sirius and Lupin as like kind of like a balancing act of each other. So I definitely agree with what you're saying, that had he asked just Sirius, he wouldn't feel as comforted about his own dad. But with Remus there, it also kind of balanced his feelings out.
Yeah. Sophia, I think you're right. I think sort of Lupin's important role kind of like, you know, as referee almost, like between Sirius and Molly in Order of the Phoenix, sort of between Harry and his like hatred of Snape in Half-Blood Prince. I think that's sort of where Lupin is important, and sort of his specific character is really suited to that role.
Yeah, and we can probably do without him, but the story would be poorer. I think our experience of the story would be poorer without him in it. But, I mean, if you absolutely had to cut somebody, he would probably be on the list.
Oh, no.
Right. Like, sort of, if, like, the filmmakers were like, listen, like, we're pressed for time and we gotta, you know, move it along, like, I could see them cutting Lupin. And, like, we'd all be furious about it, but we could see it. But yeah, that was a good comment. No need to call me Sir Professor. And I feel like now we need to have like a deep discussion about Lupin. So add it to the list.
A Lupin episode?
Can't wait.
Hell yeah, Lupin episode. But moving right along to our topic of the day, it's a chapter, and y'all know what that means. The other Sam has provided us with a chapter summary. It is, as usual, ridiculous. So, I'm going to skip the most ridiculous parts and move right along. So, per Sam, please enjoy this very comprehensive summary of the chapter. Hermione and Ron continue to not trust Harry's hunches that Draco is both a Death Eater and that Voldemort has given him a mission. Turns out Sirius's death continues to haunt Harry through his friends. Pretty hard to trust Harry's judgment when the last time you did so you were attacked by brains and a mysterious slashing spell, respectively. It's hard not to empathize a bit with Harry as Ron's next biggest issue, which is somehow not being jealous that a girl, Pansy Parkinson, has eyes for anyone other than him, in this case Draco, but minuscule first years having the audacity to point. Likewise, Hermione is much more scandalized by Hagrid being hurt they wouldn't be taking care of magical monsters instead of the baby Death Eater sitch. Horridly, Snape is the Defense Against Dark Arts teacher and sounds a lot like Harry. Well, according to Hermione anyway. But who even is Hermione? Neville can't transfigure a tea cozy. Ron somehow made it to Newt-level potions. How? Did Slughorn let teas and potions too?
Ouch.
And Minerva knows Augusta, probably from their days as Roman emperors and gods. But none of this matters since we get peak Harry snark. There's no need to call me Sir, Professor. Slughorn proves to be a harbinger for Rowling to play around with body shaming, and also quite a different and fun character, giving potions an entirely new feel. Harry wins a potions competition, beating Ron, not hard, Draco, apparently somewhat hard, and Hermione, whose difficulty level is set at God mode, so not sure how Harry did that. This provides Harry with a potion that brings up almost as many questions as the Time Turners do. Felix Felicis. Oh, I suppose there's also a textbook written in by a snot-nosed teenager. I forget who, though. Thank you, Sam.
A lot happens in this chapter, I have to say, which is evident in this summary. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. In general, like, I love the, like, little, like, slice of life at Hogwarts chapters. Because, like, you never think of, like, the big bombastic plot moments happening, but, like, you look at them and, like, there's so much going on. There's so much to sink your teeth into.
Yeah, definitely.
And in general, I really like sort of first days of class chapters. I feel like as, like, the series went on and Joe was like, oh, y'all just want to, like, spend time at Hogwarts going to classes? Okay, fine, here's a few chapters. Like, we got much more detailed looks at that.
And they really set the tone for the whole, like what Hogwarts is going to be like this year. You get that first day of classes, Order of the Phoenix, and you're like, oh God, this is going to be rough. Whereas this has a different feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, looking at this in contrast to the first day of classes in Order of the Phoenix, it's literally polar opposites. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, literally even the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here, Harry comes down, and it's a nice sunny day. It's like a clear blue sky. Whereas, in Order of the Phoenix, the enchanted ceiling echoed Harry's mood. It was a miserable rain cloud gray. And I think at the end of the chapter, we can go over some of the other parallels between the two chapters, because I think they're sort of very much, in contrast with each other. So the first thing I noticed is that this chapter is the second of 5 chapters in Half-Blood Prince that begins with Harry obsessing over Draco to Ron and Hermione.
Oh my God. This book.
I went through Half-Blood Prince at like the beginning of each chapter. So chapters 7, 9, 13, 16, and 22 all begin with like, so Harry was obsessing about Draco and Ron and Hermione wouldn't listen. Our boy is well and truly preoccupied.
Well, if they listen, maybe he would obsess less.
That's fair.
You know what? That's fair.
I think he just doesn't have that outlet to just work through all of this. So, and because he's being ignored, he's just like, okay, I'm alone with my thoughts about Draco. I'm sure that's where all the Drarry shippers come in. And
yep.
See, and I'm picturing this like full on Mean Girls. Like, I spent half my time talking about Draco and the other half wishing someone would bring him up so I could talk about Draco. It always comes back to Mean Girls.
I just wish we could all get along like we used to in middle school. I wish that I could bake a cake made out of rainbows and smiles, and we'd all eat it and be happy.
She doesn't even go here.
Do you even go to this school?
No, I just have a lot of feelings.
So we find out that the 6th years get free periods now. And I feel like this chapter provides us a lot of interesting insight into sort of like how Hogwarts academia works, especially in the later years, where like their 6th and 7th year seems a lot more like sort of our US collegiate system, where like you take a few classes, but you like haul ass for those classes and like work on them in your spare time.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's also maybe in some ways at least draws inspiration from the GCSEs and A levels in the UK, because you would typically have at least 5 GCSEs, which would be kind of, owls, but you would maybe have 3 or 4 at most A levels. So you would have less but more in-depth classes. So I guess it's kind of the same. And also in principle, I wonder how many students actually leave after owls, because you probably can, depending on what it is that you actually want to do after school. So if you're not particularly academic, I can see how somebody would just get their owls and just get out, get a job.
It's interesting that the levels the teachers pick for the Newts. It's interesting that it's the professor's choice and not like ministry run. Like, no matter who the teacher is, you have to get an O in this class and a T in this class, but it's professor what they want.
Yeah, actually, that is interesting that it's not standardized, what you have to do for Newt level classes.
It seems very Hogwarts to me. Yeah, like...
It does.
Yeah, and that's what makes me think that they're a lot more optional than owls.
Ev, you're sort of our expert on the UK. So, like,
well, I did go to school in the UK. I went to school in Republic of Ireland, so I'm kind of learning it as my son is starting to go through that system. So, I guess, yeah. So I don't have personal experience.
Okay, but so do you know, like, for A levels, is acceptance criteria standardized, or is it like this, where it's sort of like, you need 100+ to even get in?
Well, as far as I know, I think you just need to have the subject at the GCSE level. So if you want to do, I don't know, chemistry, you can't just go and do chemistry A level. You have to have done GCSE level. That's my understanding of it so far. But hopefully if we have more knowledgeable listeners, they can put me right. But I think that's how it works.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because, like, our closest analog is probably college classes, where, like, classes have prerequisites, but you need to have just, like, passed the class. You don't need a specific grade, at least that's, like, in my experience.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, on the subject of free periods, I don't say this often, but I'm kind of with Ron on this one. Like, some free periods are just meant to relax. Like, listen, thinking back to my college years, I spent a lot more of my free periods playing cards than I did studying.
Well, I think,
guys, I've just looked it up. There are prerequisites to do A-levels. So, for example, for A-level chemistry, you have to do a certain grade in maths and certain grade in GCSE chemistry to get into it. So yes, that does check out. Sorry, I was just curious.
Okay, yeah.
Well, also, I imagine Hermione has far fewer free periods than Ron and Harry do, because I'm guessing she's taking a lot more Newt level classes. So,
only 2 more actually.
Well, those probably add up.
Sure.
Like, if we're thinking that these classes are just a lot more intense, then that still is probably meaning a lot less free time.
And she gets a lot more homework. I think she complains about it, about the ancient runes.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if even Hermione's complaining about homework, like, it's bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh, those free periods in college. What a time.
Irvin.
It was good.
As far as I can tell, your whole life is a free period.
Wow, Sophia. Wow. I see what you think of me.
Am I wrong, though?
I mean, a little bit. I do work for a living.
Okay.
But you're always sick.
Honestly.
At least when you're working from home.
Listen, I occasionally even work when I'm working from home. Like, I flew in from Ireland on Tuesday, and I opened up my laptop and answered emails.
Wow.
Like, no one has suffered how I have suffered.
Okay. Yeah, they really haven't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, Irvin was sick for, like, entire 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So he said.
Yes, as far as HR at my job is concerned, I was very sick for 3 weeks while I was in Scotland. I went away from my health.
Exactly.
Yeah, as you should.
Mm-hmm.
As you should.
All right, well, moving on from personal affronts. There's this amazing interaction where Hermione confiscates a fanged frisbee from a kid, and Ron is like, oh, cool, I've wanted one. And Lavender laughs way too much at Ron's joke, and Ron looks so pleased with himself. And I love this. I love every word of this. It's so teenager.
Yeah.
Just, like, Half-Blood Prince does it so well, just, like, the teenage nonsense among, like, the, world-ending apocalyptic war. Just, it's very good.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think Lavender actually liked Ron, or was it more of like, oh, I need a boyfriend because that's the in thing to do right now? Type of, like, high school mentality, sometimes.
I don't think she'd have enough self-awareness to tell the difference.
Very true.
Touche.
I don't think it was just a boyfriend. I think it was, like, the fact that, like, Ron had been in the ministry, had fought the brain, had scars, like, in the ministry last year, and that everyone's like, ooh, like, he got this, like, mystique around him. And I think she was like, well, Harry might be out of my league because all of the other girls are going to be into Harry. But Ron is, like, he has that mystique around him now, but he might be in my league.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Also, lest we forget, Ron is now very tall.
Mm-hmm.
I was just
always
about to
forget
say
that.
that it counts for a lot more than it really should.
Yeah. Like I don't remember what chapter it's in where Hermione's explaining why everyone fancies Harry, and she's like, and it doesn't hurt that you grew like 6 inches over the summer, and Ron's like, I'm tall.
I know, I love that chapter.
Oh, that's so sad.
But yeah, no, I think Lavender was sort of genuinely interested. I'll give her that much credit.
But, like, clearly she wasn't before this year. So I think a big part of it was that he, like, had become a little bit famous.
Yeah. Well, because was Lavender the one who was, like... No, that was Padma. When, like, Ron was in the second task of the Triwizard, and suddenly Padma was like, oh my god, tell me about this wild adventure you had.
Yeah, that was Padma.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of similar energy. Like,
yeah, similar energy, totally.
Didn't Trelawney, though, say to watch out for a red-headed man to Lavender?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Shoulda listened. Trelawney always knows. But, okay, so they go to breakfast, and they are picking newt classes, and McGonagall is going around figuring out everyone's schedule, and, okay, I know it's Hogwarts, and everything is a mess, but doesn't this really seem like something that should have been done before classes started?
Yes! Over the summer.
Right? Yeah,
like, have this over OWL. You can figure this out.
I mean, hell, have the kid, like, flew in for 10 minutes, like, you know, even just their head.
Maybe it was already done and she's just confirming it with them in case they, like, had a change of heart. Or
I mean, no, it clearly wasn't, because they're all, like, figuring out the subjects on the spot. Like, you know, Neville, like, doesn't take Transfiguration, takes Charms. Harry and Ron end up in potions.
Well,
like,
yeah,
clearly,
but
like,
I mean, do you think she maybe, like, has it pre-done for them, just sort of guessing what would be the right thing for them to do, and then she asks them?
That seems like so much. Like, why would you try to, like, guess people's schedules when, like, you can just figure it out with them?
Yeah. But I think this is, you know, for plot reasons, and I do appreciate it because it gives us that a beautiful moment with Neville, which we wouldn't have had otherwise if it was done over the summer, so... Fair.
I guess, like, I just have enough teachers among my friends, where, like, I'm thinking schedules, and, like, some of these teachers have, like, 11 other sections to teach that all need to be scheduled.
They do!
And then they're like, and we just have no idea who's taking this subject. Like, Hagrid could have spent weeks preparing newt classes for the 6th years.
That no one shows up for.
Like,
That's
we know
so
he didn't.
sad.
We know he didn't because he's a useless teacher. But he could have.
That is sad.
Well, to be fair, that would be fine because that's his job. So he should, in principle, be prepared. What if a student joins from somewhere else halfway through the year and he is like, oh no, now I have to prepare my lessons? Should have at least a vague idea what he should be teaching in that year, even if nobody signs up.
Well, but there's vague idea and there's prep. Like, Slughorn was brewing, like, Amortentia and Veritaserum, presumably for the last month. Like, you know, what if you're doing that caliber of work to prepare for your class and you just don't get a class?
Yeah, that would suck.
I don't know. I think you just live with that as a teacher. I don't really see that as a problem, personally.
See, like, this is how you can tell, like, oh, I've gotten older, because now I was like, what about the teachers? Think about the teachers.
Exactly. There are summer months being spent with all of this, and then if it doesn't pan out, yeah. No, I agree.
But okay, Sophia, you mentioned that we get McGonagall being absolutely iconic.
Yes, this is one of my favorite McGonagall moments.
Neville.
Yes.
Me too. Just, I think we need to just read these quotes, because just, they're perfect.
Yes.
I'll take the first one. It's high time your grandmother learned to be proud of the grandson she's got, rather than the one she thinks she ought to have, particularly after what happened at the ministry. Boom!
Yes, someone needed to say it. Honestly, before now.
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And then one of you want to take the second one?
Sure, I'll take it. Take charms, said Professor McGonagall, and I shall drop Augusta a line reminding her that just because she failed her charms owl, the subject is not necessarily worthless.
Snap, snap, snap!
It's so good.
Yes.
Like, I love McGonagall so much.
I love that for so many reasons. Like, partly just, like, that it's like such a great way to get Neville's confidence up, because it seems like Neville for such a long time has just treated his grandmother's view of the world as like the be all end all, and that she's just like subtly undermining that by being like, your grandmother is biased because she's not good at this. It's such a great moment.
Like, I feel like sort of the last few books are in so many ways about learning that these, like, you know, like grown-ups and adults in your life whom you hero worship, like, are very fallible and are very human. And, you know, we spend a lot of time with Harry on his journey in that regards. We sort of get very small glimpses of Draco's journey in that regard. And here we just get a little tiny hint of Neville also being like, oh, I guess Gran isn't perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that means that I don't have to be the version of myself that she wants me to be. I can be my own version of myself. Like, that's the sort of freedom that McGonagall is giving him by saying that.
Mm-hmm. Aww. Oh, also, can we just talk about Augusta's vendetta against charms? Because, like, it is wild to me that someone can just, like, write off a complete branch of magic. Some might argue, like, the most essential branch of magic, just because they, like, failed a test. Like, I'm getting shades of Sheldon Cooper's vendetta against engineering.
Yeah, because I think he also thinks that it's a soft option, just like charms. But there's nothing wrong with taking a soft option, even if it was. It's not, but even if it was, what's wrong with a soft option if that's something that you're interested in and good at?
Yeah.
So that should be fine anyway.
And, like,
from my point of view,
I went on a whole journey with this because I was like, listen, like, I was abysmal at biology, and, like, you know, I don't think biology is a worthless subject. I just think it's something I want nothing to do with. But then I was like, but then again, I do consider both French and gym to be worthless, and I was really bad at those.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's
okay, bit of a glass house here.
Mm-hmm.
But Charms is objectively awesome, so no, she's still wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a defense mechanism some people have.
Definitely.
Sort of like what's that phrase? Sour grapes. It's like, I can't do it or can't have it, therefore it's not worth having at all,
right,
or knowing anything about. So I think it would have required a little bit of, like, vulnerability from Augusta to say, look, well, I wasn't that great at charms, but if you want to do charms, you clearly are quite good at it, go for it. You'd be fantastic. But she can't do that. She's not that kind of person. She can't lose face and say, well, I failed it. There's no way she would have told Neville if McGonagall didn't tell him.
Especially because she spent Neville's whole life criticizing him and saying he's not good enough. So then to have it, like, thrown in her face that he's actually better than she is at something, that clearly is, like, sort of messed with her idea of the world. And so she's like, no, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about how, in my experience with high school, you had, like, advanced math and advanced science and all that stuff, but you also have the option of just taking the basics. So when they get to 6th year, if they don't get into the Newt level, potions, charms, whatever, can they still take, like, a basic level of it? So they're still retaining information and still kind of learning? Or are they just done with that subject? And to me, these feel such, like, charms and potions and feel such a basic core of education that to stop at 6th year because you didn't test well doesn't feel right.
But I think it, like, the implication is that you've learned enough in the first 5 years to, like, you know enough to get through life. Sort of like, you know your basic charms, you know your basic potions. It's kind of like math, where, like, you know, if you've learned, like, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, like, you don't really need to take calculus to get through life, even though everyone should, because it's a lot of fun.
I mean, it is true. Like, looking back, I'm sure the math classes I took later on weren't really necessary.
Well, I think it is maybe a bit more like the British system in that way, of my understanding of the British system, that if you don't make A-levels in certain things, you just don't take them, right?
Yeah.
You don't take those classes.
Okay.
So I think it is more similar to that, whereas the American system is much more like you continue taking those classes, at least in high school. Also, I mean, already the class schedule for the professors makes zero sense. Like, how does one potions professor do all of those classes? But it would make...
Disagree. I've worked out their class schedules. It's doable.
Oh, okay. I am curious.
You actually work it out?
I am curious, not for right now, but a different time. I would like to see how you've worked it out, because I have thought about this while trying to fall asleep at night and been like, how does this make sense? But anyway, it would make it not possible if they also had to teach the basic levels for 6th and 7th years. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, basically, like, at most, like, I'll just give, like, the very brief overview. At most, each professor has 12 sections, right? So, 2 per year for years 1 through 5, because they usually have classes in, like, 2 houses at a time.
But they don't always.
But they can.
I mean, I think the implication is that they're meant to.
Okay.
And then 1 6th year section, 1 7th year section. So 12 sections altogether.
How long are their periods? Because they have single and double periods.
I would say single is probably 45 minutes. That would be a standard time.
Yeah. And double would be an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, except I have never heard a single person who wasn't Gryffindor mentioned in a Transfiguration class, in their Divination class. Like, you know, there are a lot of classes where they don't mention people from even their Charms class, History of Magic. Nobody from other, like, grades.
I think Joe said
mentioned.
that Charms is with the Ravenclaws.
Who said?
Joe said somewhere in the Apocrypha that Charms is with the Ravenclaws.
All right, theoretically, but I've never seen a Ravenclaw say anything or be mentioned in a Charms class.
Yeah. No, so they're not mentioned, but I think sort of the implication is that all these classes are 2 houses at once, because it just doesn't make sense to teach 10 students at a time.
No, it really doesn't. Yeah, I just think when you're reading the books, it does not read that all of those classes are 2 houses at a time.
Fair.
It probably depends on the numbers they get in a year. They can probably even have 3 houses at a time if they're particularly small.
Yeah, like, I think sort of subjects like, you know, ancient runes or, you know, arithmetic, they might just have sort of like all 4 houses at once, if not a lot of people sign up.
Yeah, the optional ones, yeah.
So, like, you know, sort of the main struggle is like your core subjects. Sort of Transfiguration, Charms, Herbology, Potions, and Defense. Yeah,
so technically, given that the newts are, you know, they're mentioned as being advanced studies only, if you were doing your newts and the subjects you were good at, and you felt like, oh, I could really do with a better understanding of Charms, because I barely scraped an acceptable in my owls, I'm sure if you make a case to your Charms professor, you could probably sit in with the previous year.
In fact, I think they do that for students who flunk.
Yeah.
Because Snape mentions that Crabbe and Goyle are trying to pass their, I think, defense owl the second time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no reason why you can't work on your basics even in 6th year.
Yeah.
Potentially. Because it's still being taught just for the classes below you.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I did have a question about the Care of Magical Creatures class, though, because Ron is very sure that nobody's going to take it, because he asks, do you reckon anyone's going to go on to Newt? And
he's right.
Yeah, and he's very sure that nobody's going to do it, but I wonder if that's actually true. I know we don't hear about anybody doing it, but I wonder if there's some students who need to have Care of Magical Creatures Newt for their career, in which case, regardless of how much they like or dislike Hagrid's lessons, they would want to do it. Because we know Parvati does divination even though it's Trelawney and not Firenze, who she would much prefer.
But okay, like, Parvati doesn't have an issue with Trelawney. Parvati really likes Trelawney. She just likes Firenze in a different way.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, it's not that Parvati objects to having lessons from Trelawney, whereas, like, I think Ron is absolutely right. After 3 years of Hagrid's teachings, like, I'm sorry, no one in their right mind would take Newt classes from him. Like, if you need it for a career, then you're like, you know what? There will be a continuing education course somewhere. Like, I'm gonna go to Romania and study dragons. I'm gonna go to Beauxbaton after I graduate and take a course.
I don't know. Have you guys never had a class with a really, really terrible teacher, but you still take a class?
Not to the extent that Hagrid was terrible.
That doesn't really ring particularly untrue.
Yeah, to me,
sometimes there is a class that you take and the teacher is just bad and you just get on with it.
But yeah, because sometimes it's just like, yeah, you're required to take it for whatever. So I think that if someone's really interested in magical creatures and wants it for their career, yeah, they're going to suffer through some more classes with Hagrid. I mean, the thing is that Hagrid's classes, at the very least, are very easy. Like, they don't seem to really have homework or anything. Like, there don't seem to be tests. So, like, if it's just, you're basically, you know, spending that class period kind of learning about whatever magical creatures, and you have to suffer through it because then you will get your NEWT in it and be able to do better in your career. I'd say probably there are a couple of people who would do that. We don't know anything about the Hufflepuffs or Ravenclaws in Harry's Year, so there might be some of them who would want to do it.
But it says that, like, no one takes Newt level care magical creatures. Like,
I'm not sure it actually says that. That's their assumption.
Yeah, so I thought too.
Hold on.
Yeah,
like, Hagrid never confirms that. Like, Hagrid's upset because his 3 favorite students don't take it, but it never says that Hagrid is upset because nobody is taking his class. They just assume that nobody is taking his class.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I read it as well. Also, given that the Newt is most likely like the Owls, is an externally administered exam, the examination is still going to happen and will cover certain questions regardless of what Hagrid would actually be teaching. So technically you could be a student that realizes, okay, well, Hagrid isn't an amazing teacher, but I know what's going to be examined in my Newt, and then just spend a lot of time in the library.
That's true. You might be able to do that. I don't know if it works like that or not, but you might be able to do that.
I don't know. Like, I just, between the blast-ended Scroots and the flobberworms, like, I cannot imagine anyone subjecting themselves to that. Like, there have to be other options.
I mean, there could be, but, you know, when you're in school, you don't necessarily know about them. I had a teacher that would just bring her dog to school and just talk about her dog a lot. It never really occurred to me that to, you know, look into trying to get that knowledge elsewhere. I just went, oh, she's a bit weird. The dog was cute, though.
Yeah. Whereas, like, in my experience, like, you know, when it's the core classes and you don't have a choice, like, yeah, you suck it up. But, like, you know, if it's something that you can choose to study or not study, like, you know, professor quality absolutely factors in.
Well, that was kind of the point I was trying to make. It might not be optional as a prerequisite for a career. So it would be optional to take it in Hogwarts in isolation. But if you wanted to do a particular career that required you to have a care of magical creatures Newt, you might feel like you have to take it. Does that make sense?
Yes, but just, again, you could find a way around that. Anyway, talking of the Newt classes that people are taking, right? So Hermione chooses not to take Newts in 2 of the subjects that she got outstandings in, which is astronomy and history of magic. And I thought that was interesting. So for history of magic, it makes sense that no one would take the Newt because all he does is read lectures in a soporific voice. So, like, yeah, Hermione can just read books on her own time, and, like, if she wants to learn more about history of magic.
No, yeah. Newt level is where he goes all dramatic, and he like tells his stories in a dramatic fashion. Everyone's missing out.
Oh, you think he's saving all his good teaching for Newt level?
Yeah.
And he probably doesn't even know that there are no students in his classroom. He's just, like, performing for them.
Continue, yeah.
Yeah, like when they're making schedules, he's like, and so I'm going to need 3 sections for 6th year and 3 sections for 7th year. And they're like, should someone tell? No, let him get on with it.
His timings probably never changed. They just have them fixed since, I don't know, whenever he died.
Yeah. But astronomy was more curious to me. So, like, I was trying to think why Hermione wouldn't take astronomy, and I wonder if maybe there is no Newt level astronomy. Like, if astronomy is only needed as a prerequisite for potions and herbology and care of magical creatures and divination and, like, you know, all these classes, maybe after 5 years, sort of, they've learned all the astronomy they need to know to, like, get on with that. And so just there is no astronomy Newt.
Yeah. I am just curious, like, why astronomy is that necessary in general for being a wizard, but and like I doubt they're getting into like all of the science of like how, you know, like I doubt they're really getting into the science of it. So I'm like, yeah, how much do they really need to know?
Well, I think it impacts, like, you know, potions and herbology and stuff, because, you know, plants have to be picked under the full moon, or potions have to be brewed, you know, on the second, you know, waxing gibbous, or whatever. Like
sure.
And divination, of course, uses a lot of astronomy.
Yes.
So I think it's necessary for all of that, sort of as far as I can tell. But yeah, I feel like sort of 5 years of classes, you can get a grasp on that. Because, yeah, they're not doing, like, you know, the physics of black holes and whatever.
That would be interesting if they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I always kind of got the sense that astronomy was not as much of a full class as their other classes. Like, that they would maybe, like, meet once a week in the evening. Like, and had some homework. Like, it's just not mentioned as much, and it doesn't, like, feature as much. Yeah, it just isn't mentioned that much. So I always kind of imagined that it was kind of like it's necessary, but it's like a sort of...
like a health class.
A side class. It's, like, not as... it doesn't take as much time as other classes.
You know what I want? I want a fan fiction where this... you know, a muggle astrophysics graduate gets this really strange advertisement in a local paper, and then turns out that the job is actually for astronomy teacher at Hogwarts.
Yeah, because you don't need to be a wizard to be able to teach
technically
astronomy.
No, and I just want to read about, like, the person's adventures of, like, being a teacher at Hogwarts but teaching astronomy. That'd be brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, that would be probably more likely to be a squib because, you know, all of the anti-muggle protections around Hogwarts. But, like, if you're a squib, yeah, you should learn astronomy and become an astronomy teacher at Hogwarts.
Yeah, Filch, why don't you make something of yourself?
He's too miserable.
I mean, but also, like, getting back to the class schedules, like, all these classes happen at night. So if Professor Sinistra is teaching, like, 10 different sections of astronomy, like, she must be fully nocturnal at that point, right? Like,
well, I mean, you can teach the theory at any time. It's just the part where they use the telescopes needs to happen at night.
But they seem to do a lot of that.
It's kind of like the...
Yeah, we've never even heard about it.
Well, that's probably the more interesting part. It's the part we see.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we don't see any of it. We just, like, hear that Harry has astronomy on his schedule, and then he takes the owl, and we're like, oh, I guess he studied that for the last 5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
True.
But also, while we're talking about Hermione's class schedule, it's time for the 7 ingredients of today's special. Because Hermione takes 7 Newt classes. She's taking Charms, Transfiguration, Herbology, Defense Against Dark Arts, Potions, Arithmancy, and Ancient Runes.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. Like, I think one semester in college, I was taking 5 classes, or no, 6 classes, and, like, it nearly killed me. So, yeah, it sounds like an awful lot.
Yeah.
So, once Hermione's schedule is figured out, we turn to Harry and Ron and sort of the issue of can they or can they not take potions. And, that's fairly straightforward. But the interesting part is sort of Snape's requirement for his newt classes, because we know he would only take outstandings into the potions newt. But Snape clearly exceeds expectations in his defense against dark arts newt, because we know Ron got an E, and so did Hermione, and both of them take defense. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, you know what? I bet Harry was the only kid in his year to get an outstanding newt in defense against dark arts, and Snape was like, I'm not having private lessons with Potter.
Oh
nope,
my God.
Not again. Not doing it.
Yeah,
nope,
I buy that.
We tried that.
Completely buy that.
That's so funny.
I wonder if a subject only does have one student, do they kind of like go, okay, not just outstanding, I can also exceeds expectations as well. So you have to kind of open up more if only one student passes for the newt level.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say you kind of have to, I would think. Also, I wonder if, Dumbledore, whoever sort of steps in with Defense Against the Dark Arts in particular, and is like, these students have had the most bizarre and random mixture of Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers. They probably are not capable of getting to outstanding. So I would imagine that there might be, for Defense Against the Dark Arts, you can't expect too much.
Yeah, grading on a curve.
Yeah.
I also wonder if this is where, how we mentioned earlier, whether there is any ministry or oversight on that. So I wonder if actually you're supposed to take students who got either E or O grades into the newt level, because if the newt is the advanced study of the subject, so you want something that's more than acceptable. And they're the only two grades that are above acceptable. So it could be that Snape taking only outstanding is just his personal idiosyncrasy that nobody else shares.
I could totally see that.
Yeah, it seems like a very Snape thing, because that is a ridiculous requirement.
Yeah. And also I kind of imagine, okay, let's say you had your career counseling in 5th year and you were told you need to get an exceeds expectation to be able to continue with Defense Against the Dark Arts. It doesn't seem fair that then just because the teacher changes, that suddenly the grade that you get, has to be higher for you to take it. In Harry and Ron's case, since it's lower, it works. But, if you were saying, okay, I need to study to get an exceeds expectation, and then you get it, and then you're told, no, sorry, you can't take this class anymore, that just seems unfair.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very good point.
Yeah. I also wonder if sort of his decision to exclude exceeds expectation students, that's probably something that could be appealed. I sort of imagine, if a Malfoy doesn't get into, nude potions but wanted to, the concerned parents would show up, talk to the Board of Governors. That sort of seems something ripe for overruling.
Yeah, I think so.
But I don't think Harry would get it overruled.
No.
Also, I guess they're warned in potions by Snape that he will only take outstanding, so he does bring it up. So technically, at least they know about it, which they wouldn't have known about DADA.
Well, and it also makes sense because, Snape does not do well with intellectual inferiors, or as he calls them, a bunch of dunderheads.
Yeah.
Or just people in general.
Yeah. Because I was about to be well, he does better with gifted people, but no, he doesn't do well with those either. No, he's just bad with people. So, that's breakfast, and then Hermione trots off to, I think, Ancient Runes, and Harry and Ron have their blissful free period, and the subject of Quidditch comes up. And Harry talks to Katie Bell, and interestingly, Katie says that Harry should try out everyone for the team, rather than grandfathering her in, when Harry's we've been playing together for 5 years, what are you talking about? And this certainly goes against how Oliver Wood and Angelina Johnson ran their Quidditch teams. We never hear of tryouts for any positions that, have a returning student in it. So I kind of want the story of Katie Bell's savage criticism about how the Quidditch team was run in the last 5 years, where, like, she's on this team and she's like, these captains are terrible, they're grandfathering everyone in, they're letting in their friends, we could be winning all our matches, but they don't know if there's a better player out there. Like, I imagine Katie Bell has very strong feelings about this.
That's so funny because when you were saying this, my first reaction was, she's only saying this because of Ron.
Oh.
Ron is certainly looking uncomfortable as she says it.
Exactly.
So.
You are not wrong.
I think that she was fine with Oliver Wood and Angelina Johnson letting in the people because she knew all of them were great. And she knows that she's great, so she knows she's going to make the team again. So she's like, I'm not threatened by the idea of there being tryouts for all the positions. But maybe there's someone out there that's better than Ron.
I love this so much.
Very diplomatic.
Canon accepted. Yes. Either way, Katie Bell is a savage, and I'm here for it. There's a great contrast between the beginning and the end of this chapter that I just want to point out before we dive into the individual lessons. So at the beginning, all the first years are like eavesdropping on Harry and pointing at him. They're like, oh. And you're like, oh, they're just being ridiculous. Like, you know, they're just obsessed with fame. But then later on, it's revealed that Hermione deems Harry's words worthy of memorization as much as the standard book of spells. And that hits so differently, and it sort of validates the thing at the beginning of the chapter where, like, Harry really is becoming someone, like, respected, like, someone you listen to and look up to, even though, like, he's only 16. So I thought that was really interestingly done.
Like, he's getting famous for something he's actually done as opposed to not dying as a baby.
Yeah.
But yes, so with that, let's get to Snape's lesson. So, the students in the lesson that we know of are Harry, Ron, Hermione, Neville, Parvati, Dean, Seamus, and Draco Malfoy. And I have to imagine there have to be lots of other students there, because if it were just 7 Gryffindors and Draco in Snape's new class, I feel like Snape would just be like, nope, I quit. I don't want to teach defense against dark arts. I give up. Like, not having it.
Wait, isn't Ernie in that class?
No, he's...
No, but...
wait, is there
doesn't afterwards, isn't he like, shield charms are old hat for SDA lags?
Oh. Yes.
Right, yes, that's right.
Yeah, Ernie isn't in that scene, but he mentions it later, you're right.
Yeah.
So Hufflepuff's there too.
Okay. Yes. 7 Gryffindors, Ernie, Macmillan, and Draco. That somehow seems more exhausting for Snape.
Yes.
But he wanted to teach the idea for so long, you don't think he would just teach an empty classroom if you had to?
I think he'd much prefer an empty classroom, to be honest.
Because he spent so much time on the decor, and he changed the curtains, and he put all those creepy pictures on the wall.
Yes.
So dramatic.
Because I'm just picturing, you know, My Life as Background Slytherin comics, how he's just flouncing along the...
Oh, totally.
In between the desks.
Like, okay, now I'm just imagining Snape spending, like, the whole summer on the interior decorating and just, like, getting out, like, catalogs and, like...
Yeah, and he's like, all right, well, the feng shui is a little off. Like, let's move it to the left.
Yeah. Which one is my best Crucio picture? This one might be
because let's be honest,
effective.
he has a large collection. So, we find out that the book assigned to the class is called Confronting the Faceless, and that is a stupid title. Like, I'm sorry, like, no two ways about it. Why would you call a book Confronting the Faceless when you could call it Facing the Faceless? I just... Whoever the publisher of Confronting the Faceless is, they did a bad job.
Maybe they didn't like alliteration.
Yeah.
Yeah, too much repetition. Yeah. They thought it made it seem, like, not as serious.
This is 6th year. This is Newt level.
Also... it has no keywords in the title. My publisher would be shocked and appalled. Like, how are you going to get those good SEO results, that Amazon optimization? No, I'm sorry. The publisher of Confronting the Faceless gone f***ed up.
Yeah, except internet doesn't work for wizards, so probably the best. The most important thing is just whether it's in Flourish and Blots.
I mean, to be fair, they do have some excellent titles as well. What was that one? What to do
when you know the worst is coming.
When you know the worst is coming.
Yeah. And what to do now that you've wised up. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wait. No, that was the subtitle. It's When Fortunes Turn Foul, What to Do When You Know the Worst is Coming. Like, that is a good title.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, listeners, tell us, what is the best book title in this series? Because, like, there's some really good ones.
There are.
But I think Snape also does not think very highly of this book, because when the lesson begins, he tells them to put their books away. And this is interesting because Joe uses this as a sort of shorthand for, like, the effectiveness of the defense teacher. So Lockhart and especially Umbridge emphasize books in their classes. They're like, wands away, like, let's focus on the books. Lupin, Moody, and Snape each tell them to put their books away in the first lesson. And, like, we know those are meant to be the effective defense teachers.
Would you say it's effectiveness or something else? Because, like, with Lupin, it's more, the practical nature of the class. And with Snape, I think it's more, he just wants all attention on him. I don't think he necessarily doesn't like the book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I found the title that I really like. Powers You Never Knew You Had and What to Do with Them Now You've Wised Up.
That is a good title.
That is a good one.
So when Snape is monologuing, he uses a lot of words, to describe the dark arts as a hydra without ever actually saying the word hydra.
Mm-hmm.
And this got me thinking, do hydras not exist in the world of Harry Potter? They must not, because they're never mentioned in any of the texts. They're never mentioned in any of the Apocrypha. And I mean, like, why would Snape not use the word if, like, that was a word they had? So I suppose they don't exist in the Wizarding world, and that's unusual.
Yeah.
For it to be such, like, a well-known mythological creature, for it to not even get, like, a passing mention in the text, I'm sort of wondering if Joe Rowling, like, has a rationale for excluding them, or if they just didn't come up. But yeah, I
would say maybe she wanted to skip the Greeks, but that's definitely not true, because we have Fluffy, who is Cerberus, which would be Greek. It is odd. I never noticed that before.
I always assumed Greek myths were, like, history to the wizards. It actually happened. So it is odd that the Hydra isn't even mentioned in Fantastic Beast or anywhere else. Mm-hmm.
Well, especially because plenty of the ancient Greek beasts, like, are part of it. The Chimera comes to mind. I think the Manticore is also theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, like, I know when it comes to stuff like vampires, like Jo Rowling said, she's like, listen, that's a different tradition, and I didn't want to deal with it, so no. But yeah, now I kind of want...
the vampires get mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
We know they exist.
Now I kind of want to ask her about hydras.
Maybe they got mentioned, but they got cut.
Add it to my list of questions.
Potentially.
Yeah, like, that would be a good, like, editor's note. Like, when the editor's like, hey, you say the dark arts are like a hydra. You don't have hydras, right? And Joe's like, oh... They're like a many-headed beast where every time you cut off one of the heads, another head grows from more... And I'm like, wow, it's a lot of words to say Hydra.
Well, maybe Hydras do exist, but Snape's perception of their intelligence and knowledge of magical creatures is so low that he's like, I should just explain what it is.
Because I have Hagrid as a teacher.
Yeah.
So, Sophia, you're just assuming that, like... Everyone here in this chapter is just talking down to Harry and his friends.
Oh, yeah. But, like, with Snape, it totally makes sense. He would be like, God, these people don't know anything. Like, if I say Hydra, they're going to be like, what's that? And I don't want to deal with that, so...
Fair enough. I like that alternate explanation. I just found it interesting how much Snape features in this chapter. So the chapter is a microcosm of the book, same titles and all, where, like, Snape is just, like, front and center for the whole thing, but never revealed as the Half-Blood Prince.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, like, I'm curious, did any of y'all, like, ever guess that it was Snape or have any theories?
No.
I mean, I was like maybe 9 or 10 when I read it, so definitely
Same.
not.
Sam, how were you 9 or 10? You're older than me.
I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was thinking of the first book. Yeah, no, definitely not 9 or 10. But I meant, like, I didn't even think I had, like, a hunch or a prediction at all.
Yeah. And so now we come to the line, the best line, the most iconic line, and we once again need to give a shout out to our commenter, named after this. There's no need to call me Sir, Professor. I feel like I just set the book down and just applauded for a minute.
It is amazing. It's like one of my favorite lines. Second only to Have a Biscuit, Potter.
So other than it being iconic and perfect and flawless and wonderful, this is one of the very few instances in the books where Harry is being a brat. Like, Harry's absolutely being as bratty as Snape makes him out to be. Yeah. Because, like, this was, like, it was largely unprovoked, right? Like, Snape was, being mean, but, like, sort of within the bounds of an unpleasant teacher. And I was like, you go, Harry, but also, wow.
Yeah, I don't think at this point in the story, so we're in book 6 now, Harry doesn't really need to be provoked by Snape anymore. So by this stage of the story, I don't want Patrick to beat me, so I'm gonna say Snape is Snape is Harry's cracker-eating bee.
You mean
bitch? Yes. See, now Patrick is going to beat me. Which, just in case you're not familiar with the concept, just means that anything Snape does is annoying and suspicious, even if it's completely innocent, like eating crackers.
I first of all, I love this term. Like, I came across it a few years ago, and I was like, it's perfect.
Yeah, so, but I really think that's what it is. It's just, if Snape is at all in the picture at this point, he's just a cracker-eating bitch. So he's just annoying just by virtue of being there. Which I actually relate to, because there have been people in my life that it would come to that point that you're in the vicinity of this person. They're not really doing anything this time yet. They're not doing anything, but you are already on edge.
Yeah, and I think also this is just like part of Harry over time, like sort of growing to be like, I'm no longer a small child that any adult who wants to can bully. Like, we see this with the Dursleys too, that like at first he kind of does his best not to upset the Dursleys, and then over time he's kind of like, who cares? Like, I can upset the Dursleys, I can handle whatever they throw at me, like, I am gonna just like do my thing. And I think we see that with Snape as well, that he's like, these are no longer the days when Snape can just bully me and can just try to curse me in class and like expect me to do nothing about it. And like he is just like growing into being more of an adult, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna like take this from people just because they claim to have power over me.
Yeah. And I'm sure part of that is like, he's now like very actively faced off against Voldemort. Like, he has faced off against Death Eaters. Like, so I feel like, when he gets to class or, the Dursleys, he's like, listen, I have dealt with bigger and badder bullies. Like, come at me, bro.
Totally. he knows, like, also he's dealt with grief as well. So he knows what the worst outcomes are, and getting a detention is nowhere on that list, you know? It's just like, it's no longer this sort of first year of like, oh no, like, what if we get in trouble? He's like, you know what? I can live through that.
Yeah. Well, and I think he's also sort of like, you know, run the math, and he's like, all right, so like they're probably not going to expel me for sassing Snape.
Exactly.
Like, in Sorcerer's Stone, he's like, you know, oh my god, I flew on a broom, like, they're gonna expel me, or they're gonna beat me with a cane, or like, it's all gonna be bad. And I was like, yeah, okay, they'll give me detention, and this time they probably won't make me carve words into my skin, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, totally.
At this point, he had so many different detentions, he's like, well, you know what, I can deal with another one.
Yeah, I'm Harry Detention Potter. That's what's up.
I also like how everybody's like gasping in horror except for, what is it, Ron and Seamus? Which are like
Ron, Dean, and Seamus. Pretty much all
like,
the Gryffindor boys except Neville are just like, yeah. Which, again, also, like, teenagers. Like, it's also teenager. Like, you know, can't you just see everyone being like, oh.
Yes.
So, I think we've mentioned that, like, book 6 is very, very ringy with book 2. Like, the two parallel each other a lot. And so, there's, like, a bit of a ring here with, like, the dueling club scene in particular. Like, you know, Harry is partnering Ron, and then Snape is like, watch me, and, you know, Harry ends up with unpleasant spells flying at him. But I actually thought this scene, brought forth echoes of Snape's first lesson in Sorcerer's Stone. Just sort of like a lot of the beats, like, were very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so first we have Snape who monologuing poetically about the subject.
Yes.
You know, I can teach you to bottle fame, brew glory, even put a stopper in death. Like, the dark arts are many, unchanging, and yada, yada, yada. Then Hermione, of course, has all the answers, and of course, Snape does not want the answer from Hermione. In both scenes, Harry is finally goaded by Snape into some sassiness. And then at the end, Snape punishes Harry for his quote-unquote cheek.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this was a very nice echo.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's a good job showing how far Snape and Harry have progressed in their relationship, but also, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
This is not important at all, but when Snape was monologuing this chapter and Parvati interrupts him, I thought it was interesting how he doesn't, like, get annoyed with her. He, like, answers her question. I don't know, I thought that was like, surprised he's not, you know, how dare you interrupt my long monologue.
That's a good point, actually.
I get the sense that with Defense Against the Dark Arts, like, he genuinely cares about them learning it. Like, with potions, I get the sense that, like, if they learn it or not, he's just like, whatever, that's on them. Like, I'll put the instructions on the board, and if they figure it out, they figure it out. But I feel like with the Defense Against the Dark Arts, especially at this timing, he does care that they understand what he's talking about and that they learn something from it.
Do you think he's almost trying to prove himself as a defense professor, where he didn't feel the need to?
That's how I always kind of read it.
I thought it was maybe more just, like, proof that he does actually care, that, like, he does know how dangerous the times are and knows that all of them are in danger from Voldemort, and, like, want to make sure that they all understand what's going on and, like, are at least somewhat prepared.
Maybe that's why he put that much work in the decor. Maybe he did care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But his version of doing that is just scaring people. But yeah.
Anything that begins with the premise of Snape caring about children, I was like, I don't know if I buy it.
Maybe it's more trying to prove it to Dumbledore that he is actually capable of being the teacher of the subjects that he does want to teach. The children are kind of incidental to this. If they weren't there, that would actually improve it for him.
Yeah, I think that's sort of my perspective on it, is he's like, look, see how good I am? See how you should have given me this job 15 years ago? Mm-hmm.
Look how good I look in my black robes in front of my black curtains.
Yes.
I was arranging those all summer.
As opposed to look how badly I looked in my black robes against the simmering fumes of a cauldron. They don't go together at all.
You can barely see them behind the fumes.
Snape just wants to be seen. That's why he says, look at me.
Mm-hmm. Look at me.
But if we don't have more comments about Snape's lesson, let's move on to something much more cheerful, Slughorn's lesson. So, Slughorn pre-makes 4 potions. He does not spend all summer on the decor. He actually brews some potions for the class. And so of the 4 potions, Veritaserum, Polyjuice, Amortentia, and Felix Felicis, Veritaserum is the only one that doesn't factor into the plot of this book, which, again, I found curious.
It goes back to the 2 previous books, though.
Sure.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm trying to think if there's any reason that Joe wanted us to, like, remember what Veritaserum was for, like, something else that comes up.
Like, it never comes up again.
No, it does come up again.
was it listed there to kind of throw us off to think it's going to come up later on?
Well, it does come up in Deathly Hallows that Rita Skeeter used Veritaserum on Bathilda Bagshot.
Right.
So it might have been just like a little reminder of like, remember what this is,
Just to keep it in our mind.
And also, actually, it is mentioned in Half-Blood Prince in terms of like, I'm pretty sure it's mentioned in terms of getting the memory out of Slughorn. And
yes.
Yeah.
Hermione being like, anything like that, is not what Dumbledore wants you to do.
Yeah. It's also mentioned that when the Ministry was locking Morphin Gaunt away, like, they didn't need to use Veritaserum or Legilimency.
Yes. So I think it's helpful in terms of, like, okay, it's been a couple books. Just a reminder, this is what this is.
So you think it was sort of Joe, like, sort of offering a pre-rebuttal of, like, everyone's going to be like, well, what about Veritaserum? And she's like, okay. I have answers for your Veritaserum, but for anyone who's forgotten, here's what it is, and here's why it doesn't apply to any of our story.
Yeah, I think so.
Fair enough.
Also, I think Slughorn is trying to show complex potions that, competent potioneer should be able to make eventually after training. So it does make sense to include it as a very complex potion. No.
I'm not asking for the Watsonian explanation. I'm sort of more wondering about the Doylist perspective. And also on the topic of the potions in this lesson. So the potion they make, the Draught of Living Death. Sorry, is it Draught or Draft?
I don't know.
It's a draft.
Okay, let's say draft. There was a popular theory back in the day that the cave at the end of the book, like the lake in it, isn't water, but is actually full of the Draught of Living Death.
Oh.
Because a lot of the descriptions of the water, like, are unnatural. Like, I think it says, the ripples vanished unnaturally fast, and the water is sinisterly smooth. And so a lot of people were like, maybe it's the Draught of Living Death, and that's why when Dumbledore drank it, it, like, all went to hell. So that would have made the
lot of it, though.
Yeah, it mainly just sort of fell over.
Yeah, but that would have made the potions class 4 for 5 in foreshadowing, but alas.
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing, this was what I was thinking before, was with the Veritaserum, like, with all of the potions that are there, or at least most of them, like, they open up questions of, like, wizarding ethics, and Slughorn sort of does bring that up a bit with many of those potions of, like, you know, these are more dangerous than they seem. And it's interesting, like the last time we saw Veritaserum brought up in the potions classroom, it was like Snape threatening to pour some over Harry's polyjuice potion just to figure out like whether he stole things from his stores. So like we have these like questions of wizarding ethics that have already been sort of brought up a bit, and that all of these potions kind of fit into that theme.
I mean, a lot of them haven't been brought up, but will be later in the book. The love potion specifically.
Yeah.
But that's a very good point. Which
also kind of leads into the theme of the chapter of like Harry using the Half-Blood Prince's book and like the ethics of that and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the draft of Living Death offers a callback to Snape's first lesson again, because that's when we first hear about it.
Yeah.
And ironically, so both first potions lessons of each professor that we see, they both begin with 3 complex questions. Snape has the, what was it? Infusion of wormwood and powder root of asphodel, the what is a bezoar, and then what's the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane. Slughorn is a little bit more straightforward. He's like, what are these 3 potions?
Yeah. And it's less, like, for Snape, it just feels like he's trying to make them all feel bad for not knowing the answer. He doesn't expect them to know the answer. Like, he's annoyed, I think, that Hermione knows the answers to these questions. Like, he's trying to make them feel bad is the sense I'm getting. And it's specifically Harry.
Oh, yeah.
But I think in general, he wants them all to be like, I don't know what these things are. Whereas I think with Slughorn, it's more like, this is a teaching tool. Like, it's asking these questions to engage the class. So it feels very different, but similar. Yeah, parallels.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So we come to Amortentia, which, like, I don't know about y'all, but, like, we can just acknowledge that the ethical considerations of love potions are, and move along.
Yeah.
So Amortentia, smells like whatever most attracts you. So we get Hermione's and Harry's 3 smells that they find in the potion. So for Harry, it's what was it?
Something flowery.
Ginny.
Yeah, something flowery. Yeah, treacle tart, broomstick handle, and something flowery he might have smelled at the burrow.
Ginny.
And then, whereas Hermione, we get parchment and freshly mown grass, and then she stops. So back in 2007, someone asked Joe Rowling, like, what was the 3rd smell that Hermione smelt in Amortentia? You know, essentially the essence of Ron that she smelled. And Rowling replied, I think it was his hair. Every individual has very distinctive smelling hair, don't you find?
So, can somebody explain to me, is this a thing? Do people smell hair?
Yeah.
Because I think it's really weird, but I think maybe that's just me, because it does come up occasionally, like when I remember somebody was telling me about how, the baby smell, when people smell babies' heads and how amazing it is. I was like, then I had a baby 14 years ago, and it never occurred to me to smell his head. It's like, it's such an odd thing to do for me, or like smell anybody's hair. So I've learned something. Apparently this is what people do.
Mm-hmm. See, we're all learning a lot today.
Definitely. So it's class for them and class for us.
His body odor.
Yeah. Would it be better if she's like, it was Ron's musk?
Ew. No. It would be worse.
But I do wonder.
I can go, maybe they have like a very distinctive smelling shampoo.
Yeah.
Sweaty Quidditch equipment.
I do wonder, like, when she has had the opportunity to, like, smell his hair specifically, like, nose up to head type smell his hair, but maybe if he does have a really strong smelling shampoo, it just, like, wafts off him.
I mean, or if he was as shaggy as he was in the 4th movie, then, like, everyone within a 10-mile radius could smell it.
True.
I mean, also, if you read the fanfics, then she had every opportunity to smell his hair. But do we want to discuss what our 3 Amortentia smells would be?
We can. What's yours?
Well, for me, like, the smell of paper in a bookstore, just like, it's wonderful. And freshly brewed coffee. Like, honestly, I don't even need to, like, drink the coffee. Like, if I could just smell the coffee, it's all I need. And just, like, a park in the rain. Ev, what's yours?
So mine would be lavender, a lot of books in one place. So not necessarily a bookstore, but, like, a library has the same effect. And also old machinery smell. I spent a lot of time thinking what it is exactly that has that smell, but I couldn't quite, because it's not petrol, because I hate how cars smell. But it's some kind of a combination of, like, a metal and, I don't know, grease. I'm not sure. But what I thought was interesting about all the smells, because the way Harry describes them, it's not something that it's not like an aphrodisiac kind of thing. It's more of, gives him this kind of a sense of well-being. It makes him feel happy, which I thought was interesting. Because, like, it's a love potion, you'd think it would be a smell that would make you, I don't know, aroused or whatever. But it's more like it makes you generally happy and content kind of smell, which I thought was interesting.
Associated with good memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which shows that it's, like, supposed to simulate love, not just lust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sophia, what's yours?
I would say, like, apples cooking. Like, my mom always made, like, applesauce in the fall, and just, like, just for hours, the apples would just be, like, bubbling on the stove, and, like, the whole house would smell like apples and, like, warm apples and cinnamon. So that would be one of them. Smell of dirt. I know that sounds weird, but I like gardening, and, like, in the spring, like, I don't know, like, when things are just start being planted and, like, people just, like, like, put new soil in spaces to plant it. I just like that smell, and it just makes me feel like, spring is coming. And, like, I don't want to be repeating what you guys say, but yeah, the smell of old books is a really good one.
Gosh, it's so weird that all of us ended up on a podcast about books. Sam, what about you?
The smell after a rainstorm, especially in summertime. There's something about just the feeling of it and just the scent. I love it. My best friend's cologne, he's worn the same cologne since high school. And he lives in Chicago, and I'll be out in New York City, and I'll smell someone with that cologne, and I'll perk up and get so happy. I'm like, oh my God, my best friend's here. And I realize, like, wait, no, he's still in Chicago. But I just associate that smell so much with him and happiness. And then gasoline. I like that smell at a gas station. Sometimes you get from petrol.
Wow.
I don't know if it's gasoline or something else.
Okay.
I enjoy that smell.
Me neither.
That's, no,
makes me queasy.
Nope, hard pass. It's slightly concerning.
Yeah. I'm not going around huffing it or sniff, but when I smell it, I'm like, ooh, yay.
But, you know, after we've talked about all of this, you know, yes, the Amortentia has very, very questionable ethical issues, but from all the, like, nice smells that just give you a sense of contentment and well-being, I wonder if there is a space for Amortentia as just a thing you smell, as opposed to a thing you get somebody else to drink.
A perfume. There should be a perfume brand in the wizarding world.
Because I can see, like, having, like, a little bottle of this, and, you know, you're feeling kind of down or stressed, and you sort of smell it, and then you've smelled your favorite smells and have this sense of contentment and well-being. I can just see how it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Like, I would buy that. If that was a thing, I would buy that.
Same. Ev, that's a million-gallon idea.
Now that I think about it, though, as a perfume, it does have some ethical questions, too, if you're wearing it on your body and everyone who smells you, you smell like what they love the most. That could also be kind of manipulative to people.
Yeah, no, it needs to be like a stoppered thing that you just smell. And
it's just you smell it. Yeah, that would be nice. Like, if somehow it's so that everyone smells what you love the most when they smell you, like a perfume like that, so they get a sense of, like, what brings you happiness through the way you smell.
Oh. I feel like that would be a different magic, because...
That's a different magic, though.
Yeah, I don't know how you could transfer, like, what you smell to someone else.
Yeah.
Interesting. Listeners, tell us what you would smell in Amortentia. We're curious how many of our listeners are also obsessed with lots of books in one place. So, also in Slughorn's class, look... Y'all know that Half-Blood Prince is my favorite book. I think it's wonderful. I think it's almost perfect. That said, I did find 3 mistakes in this scene, in the text, which, like, is more than I would usually expect at this juncture in the Potter series.
One for each broomstick.
Exactly. So, the first mistake, the first broomstick, if you will, is when Slughorn is praising Harry's potion and, quote, Malfoy looked rather as he had done the time Hermione had punched him in the face. But Hermione never punched him in the face.
Yeah,
she slapped him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a movieism. And, like, chronologically, it makes sense, because the third movie came out in 2004, which is, like, smack dab when she was writing Half-Blood Prince. Like, she was writing it 2003 to 2005.
I can forgive this one from Harry's point of view, because people get false memories.
That's true.
Of events.
You think Harry watched the movies and forgot how it went down?
No, like, he could have just remembered it as Hermione punching him, because it's like, it's sufficiently close enough that I can kind of believe that after a few years you just imagine it as being more impactful than it actually was.
That's true. People also retell stories in their heads and make them more dramatic, or tell them to other people and make them more dramatic. So,
all right.
I mean, I don't think that's the actual reason. That's just within universe. It could make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine. Let's see if you can answer this one. The second broomstick of error is Slughorn says that the prize of Felix Felicis is enough for 12 hours luck. Later in the book, we get multiple references to it being worth 24 hours of luck. And, like, I know Joe is bad at numbers, but this really sort of seems like one of those things that, like, should have been caught and cleared up.
Yeah, the editor should have spotted
that seems like... Yeah, the copy editor's job.
And then the third mistake, the third broomstick of error, Slughorn says that the 12 hours luck will be from dawn to dusk. And listen, y'all, I was in Scotland a week ago, and I can personally confirm that dawn to dusk is much, much longer than 12 hours.
Well, it depends on the time of year.
Yeah, in September or in winter, it'll be a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because I did some Googling. So
you're prepared.
Looking at Edinburgh on September 2nd, which is the day this lesson takes place, sunrise is 6:20 a.m., sunset is 8:03 p.m. That is nearly 14 hours, much longer than 12, and Hogwarts is in the Highlands, where the days are going to be even longer. So, yes, dawn to dusk is not 12 hours, and that is the third mistake.
To me, that's just like Slughorn being dramatic in how he's speaking and not particularly accurate, of just being like, from dawn to dusk, and, like, without thinking about how many hours. Like, to me, that just seems like him being dramatic.
Yeah, Harry does mention that he's being dramatic later. Or at least considering whether he's just being dramatic.
No. I feel like you gotta be clear with the terms and conditions on these things.
Especially with that
like,
kind of
if someone
potion.
is promising me luck dawn to dusk and the luck runs out at, like, 6 p.m., I'm gonna be salty.
You're also a math person, though, so you would listen to the 12 hours, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I also would listen to dawn to dusk.
So would you have also taken the song of the merpeople in book 4 literally, like Harry did?
Maybe a little, yes.
Mm-hmm. Also, Irvin, like, given that you probably don't wake up at dawn most days, wouldn't you rather have 12 hours than dawn to dusk? Then you can start the 12 hours whenever you want.
That's true. You know what? I could do dusk to dawn because I'm usually awake for all of that.
Exactly.
All right, you make a good point on that one. But actually, so you mentioned that Harry keeps, like, mentioning that Slughorn is dramatic and all. Harry is such a cynic in this chapter. Like, he keeps making snide comments about Slughorn. Like, oh, Slughorn was play acting and it was very good. Or like, Slughorn did this for dramatic effect and it clearly worked. And I was like, wow, Harry, like, what's with the cynicism?
I think part of it's being a teenager, but I think also, like, that he met Slughorn over the summer and sort of got a sense of his personality already and is, like, already a little bit skeptical of him.
And he just came from Snape's class, so he's just a bit in the mood.
Fair.
Also, I think, Irvin, I'm getting the sense that you're, like, as a dramatic person, you're taking offense.
Are you, though?
I mean, a little bit. But also, Sophia, I don't know who peed in your Cheerios today, but it wasn't me. I don't know why I'm being called out in this episode over and over.
Well, there's a lot of drama in it.
I know, it's why I like this chapter. But I also think it might just be that, like, I mean, yes, Harry's being a sassy teenager, but I think he's learning to read people better. I think it's a skill that he's been improving and working on, and it's a skill that I think Dumbledore is very eager to cultivate, as, like, we see with the lessons where he's like, so, like, here's what they did, here's what you can surmise. So I think part of that is he's no longer taking people like Slughorn at face value, but he's like, I see what they're doing. Also,
I wonder if that's because he has been a teacher the previous year, and he knows that you have to project a certain front of, you know, confidence, and you have to present things a certain way to maybe make them more interesting or palatable, and he's maybe looking at Slughorn from that point of view as well, having taught a class before himself.
Oh, that's very interesting. Oh, like, I'm trying to think if, like, did Harry ever do this? Like, did Harry ever, like, you know, do stuff for dramatic effect in his lessons? I'm trying to remember.
I mean, even if he didn't, he would have had to consider, okay, well, how am I going to say this? Where am I going to look when I'm saying this? So he'd probably be a lot more self-aware about what a teacher does in comparison to previously.
I feel like his decision of where to look was not a cho-chang, not a cho-chang, not a cho-chang.
That's true.
Yeah.
Doesn't he think that at some point? Like, he's, like, nervous to look at her direction while he's talking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also, like, by this point, I mean, we've already been talking about this theme about him sort of no longer taking adults at face value, kind of, and sort of seeing them as complex human beings and all of that. And he's had a lot of new teachers by this point. And a lot of them have been not what they said they were, or not what they presented themselves to be. So he has had a lot of experience of, trying to read someone and figure out, okay, like, is this someone I can trust? Is this someone who, you know, is a good person, not such a good person, secretly working for Voldemort? Like, all of those things, you know, it makes sense that he's a bit skeptical of this new teacher.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think that Slughorn, other than the favoritism, is, like, actually shows himself to be a very good teacher and, like, much more engaged in thinking about, he thinks a lot more about how to get his students engaged than we see most teachers at Hogwarts do. And, like, for someone who didn't want to come out of retirement, didn't want to teach, like, clearly he's not just phoning it in. He, like, is is trying to get these people engaged in the class and excited. And that makes me really respect Slughorn more than I might otherwise.
I'll agree with that. So I think that's actually a good segue to talking about Snape and Slughorn's contrasting sort of pedagogical styles. I feel like a lot of these, like, first day at Hogwarts, we get, like, glimpses of a lot of lessons, but here it's just sort of, like, the two centerpieces. And they present a very vivid contrast. Especially because, like, we saw Snape teach potions in the past, so, like,
yes,
we can compare how the two of them do it. So Josie Kearns over at the Harry Potter Companion, she had a good perspective on Snape's class in this chapter. So I'm just going to read her whole quote. Snape may have the gift of keeping a class silent with little effort, but to me he does not seem to be a particularly good teacher. Quite apart from his attitude, which, in stressing his students out, certainly harms them more than it helps them, he never seems to explain anything, but simply expects students to be able to do it. This works okay in potions, where the instructions are in a book. But in Defense Against the Dark Arts, or occlumency for that matter, students really need a little more guidance. Contrast his style with Lupin, for example, who gives a detailed explanation before the Boggart lesson, or for that matter with Harry, circling the room, teaching Dumbledore's army the best methods of spellcasting and giving them individual pointers. So yeah, I thought this was really good point, because sort of Snape is like brilliant at the magic, like he clearly knows what he's talking about, but in terms of actually teaching, like, even aside from like all the bullying and the blatant favoritism and all that, he's just not very good at teaching.
So
No.
I was thinking about this and how at work, when I have to train someone, I am much better at training when I can write it out and explain in detail. When I have to talk and explain it, I find myself jumping around and I'm just not very good at it. So I wonder if Snape is just a much better teacher when it comes to like writing versus explaining it out loud just in person.
I mean, I would say he doesn't really try, though. Like, there's one thing to, like, try to teach, to say things out loud and not be good at it. And there's another thing to just, like, not even attempt and then get annoyed when people don't know how to do it.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
When they don't reach his high standards.
And, like, for this lesson of, like, the nonverbal spells, and also, like, it's kind of similar to occlumency, that it's, like, very internal, like, it's something in your brain. Like, you just have to, like, internally, I don't know what it is. In this case, think the spell hard enough, I don't know, or in occlumency, not think hard enough. I think that in particular, Snape just, like, doesn't have any idea how to, like, coach someone through something like that. He's more just like, yeah, you just do it. Like, you just have to do it. And he just, like, doesn't know how to, or doesn't want to think about the, like, internals of how to get someone to a place where they would be able to do that better.
Yeah, I agree with regards to him not wanting to, but also this kind of inability to explain is kind of a bane of very smart people, because they don't know how they do it a lot of the time. If they're very, like, gifted at something, they just do it. So, like, he tells Harry to empty his mind, just, like, empty, and probably that's what he does. But you can't just say it and the other person automatically knows how to do it, and I think it just frustrates him.
Yeah,
and it's probably the same with any other things that he's, I want to say trying to teach, but I'm not entirely sure he's trying.
Yeah.
Trying particularly hard. I also strongly disagree on Snape having a gift of keeping the class quiet. I think everybody's just terrified of him. A gift would be if the class was being quiet because the teacher is so engaging that the students are hanging on every word the teacher is saying, which does not apply to Snape, in my opinion.
Well, that's a direct quote from Sorcerer's Stone, where Harry says that, like, Snape and McGonagall had the gift of keeping a class quiet without trying.
Yeah, but I see your point of, like, it's there are different ways to keep a class quiet, and it's less, it's not because it's not because people are like respect him so much or, you know, want to hear what he has to say. It's because they're scared of him. But a different type of gift, I guess.
I guess if you want to call that a gift, you can. I think that would be a gift in my personal definition of it. But you can think of it that way.
But I like that point of like, yes, that people who are very smart often don't understand how they do what they do. And I see that strongly in like how Snape teaches occlumency when he just screams at Harry, "Control your emotions!" And to me, it's so clear that that is not how Snape does occlumency. It is not because he is just so great at controlling his emotions. Like, nobody who knows Snape thinks that he actually is good at controlling his emotions. So, like, it's clear that that's not actually how he's doing it. But that's how he likes to tell himself that he's doing it. And so he screams that at Harry in a great display of controlling your emotions.
Yeah. I feel like sort of one of the common refrains I've heard in defense of Snape, like, is that like he should never have been teaching like first years, because like clearly he's not the professor you want teaching like intro to anything. But I feel like this is sort of a good rebuttal to that, because like here he's teaching like the new students, like, you know, sort of all of these accomplished students who like know the subject and are invested in the subject. And he still is terrible at it.
Yeah, he's just terrible at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, I don't know how this is possible, but I will say that it's true that, okay, someone can check my math, but I think 10 students in Harry's year make it to outstanding in their potions OWLs. That is incredible.
Yes. Can confirm.
That is incredible. So clearly he's doing something right. I mean,
it could be entirely despite of him, though.
Yeah, I have no idea how that's possible. But, like, I don't think, and we don't know, but it doesn't seem like in most other subjects there are, like, 10 people in each year who get to outstanding. Like, it seems like very possible that Harry is, like, the only Defense Against the Dark Arts outstanding. We don't know, but it seems very possible. Considering Hermione doesn't even get it. So, to me, there must be something he's doing right. I wonder if it's just like the instructions he's giving them are so much better than any of the instructions in the book. Like, is it this Half-Blood Prince thing? I don't know. Are people just so scared of him that they work really hard in potions because they're terrified that, like, he will make fun of them? I don't know what it is, but something's going right, and I don't know why.
That's a good point. I think it might be that, like, he holds them to such a high standard, like, that sort of the owls aren't that bad.
Yeah, I do wonder if that's true.
Because, like, I remember when I was taking calculus in senior year of high school, our teacher never let us use calculators. He's like, no, screw that, like, learn the math. So then when we were taking the AP exam and, like, we had calculators, we're like, this is fine. This isn't hard at all.
Yeah.
I don't think I even used my calculator. I was like, I don't know how to do calculus on a calculator. I was like, do it by hand. So, like, that might be it. That just sort of, like, you know, Snape expects so much of them that, yeah, he expects more from them than the Wizarding Examinations Authority.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
I mean, that's probably could be one slightly redeeming feature of his teaching, but that doesn't really make up for his bullying of children.
No, I wouldn't say so.
No, like to clarify, we are discussing like Snape's pedagogy, like, you know, outside of the fact that he's a horrible person and a bully and should never be around children.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ev, I think you actually had some, like, good contrasts, like, directly between Snape and Slughorn.
Yeah. So when I was rereading this chapter, some of the contrasts kind of were really vivid to me, because I hear a lot of kind of people saying how Slughorn isn't that good as a teacher, but actually looking at it more carefully, I think he is actually pretty good. But this is my kind of compare and contrast notes that I've made. So, and you can tell me whether you think it stands up to Slughorn being better than Snape or not. So Snape's lesson, he is monologuing again, just like in book 1, as we discussed. I think this is his way of trying to impress the importance of the subject, while Slughorn in his class shows the importance of the subject by demonstrating tangible outcomes of the class. So here are the multiple complex potions that an excellent newt student can expect to be able to brew by the end of their studies. Well, apart from Felix Felicis, because that's more of an incentive. So Snape is scary AF. He scares children into compliance with, himself in general and the general decor. Actually, it reminded me slightly of a lecture I had. We had like this optional medical physics class that we could take if we wanted to. And in the sample lecture, he just brought a whole bunch of unpleasant photos to show us with all the like radiation burns and everything, as kind of a way to scare people away from it. He was a lovely guy, but he did show us a lot of horrible pictures.
And did it work? Because like I would have dropped that class immediately.
Well, I dropped it.
yeah. So yes.
Yeah, I dropped it for sure. So then moving on, how do they motivate people? Slughorn motivates with reward and competition, while Snape does not tolerate any mistakes and basically will ridicule you and punish you if you make a mistake, which is not particularly healthy. Well, Slughorn actually explicitly mentions that the potion is difficult to brew, the one that they brew in the class, and he's not expecting anyone to get 100% right, which I think makes for a lot more pleasant atmosphere conducive to learning, because you are not constantly stressed. You can actually concentrate on what you're doing. I mean, Hermione is stressed anyway, because for once she's not doing as well as everybody else. But maybe it's actually kind of good for her in a way. So Snape maintains a strict hierarchy and formality at all times, while Slughorn, I think, is happy to have more of an informal and relaxed atmosphere in the classroom. So for me personally, I would have, as a student, if I was a student at Hogwarts, I would have done a lot better with Slughorn as my teacher. From the point of view of explicit guidance, they can both do a lot better, but at least Slughorn's lessons aren't inherently stressful, and you're encouraged rather than bullied.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know how Slughorn treats weaker students. There are indications that he ignores them. Molly's comment about Arthur. But at least he doesn't bully the students. So he could probably be more attentive to the ones who are struggling. But yeah, so this is my case for Slughorn being better than Snape.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I agree.
I think not just better than Snape, but like better than most teachers at Hogwarts.
Yes.
I would say his favoritism is like the biggest reason that he's like the biggest mark against him in my books. Other than that, he seems like way more invested in his lesson planning and making his lessons interesting and stuff than any other teacher we see except for Lupin, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Ev, just to rebut your one point that Slughorn doesn't offer as much explicit guidance. This is his intro class, so I think he's trying to get a feel for how much the kids can do, right? Like, that's sort of like an intro evaluation class being like, okay, so like, you know, if I give you all this potion, how bad is it going to be? Like, how much work do we have to do? So I imagine that he would also offer more explicit guidance after this first lesson.
Okay, yeah, no, I can accept that. I think that's a very good point. And I think also because of his, demeanor and the generally more kind of relaxed atmosphere, I think people might be more likely to speak up and ask a question because they're not going to be shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, we talked about how many people got outstandings in, like, the Potions Owl because of Snape, but how many more could have, if not for Snape?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, people have different mental constitution.
Yeah.
And I think it's telling that that of the people who got the outstandings, we have the Slytherins, whom he favors. We have the Ravenclaws, who, like, you know, just study and don't care who he favors. And then we have, like, the one Hufflepuff and Hermione.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there could have been a lot more people, for sure.
So actually, like, because I agree, Slughorn's lesson probably is one of the best ones we see. So I think it's sort of top 3, like, him, Lupin, and I would actually say Crouch Jr.
Yeah.
Like,
to be fair, yeah.
True. Very true.
Like, those lessons on the Unforgivables were excellent.
I mean, yes. But at the same time, yeah. Like, I'd say Crouch Jr.'s lessons are, like, both good lessons and, like, not always thinking too much about the mental state of his students, you know, like how it's going to affect them too, you know, which is not surprising either for Crouch Jr. or for Moody, who he's supposed to be impersonating. So it makes sense. But yeah, no, I think that they are good lessons.
Yeah. Well, and besides, he does, like, you know, give Neville a cup of tea afterwards to calm him down.
Yeah, well, there's an ulterior
so
motive
he
there.
Totally ignores the mental health.
And he doesn't even poison him, which is good.
Yeah. And doesn't bring up the fact that he tortured his parents into insanity. Yeah.
Yeah, really, he's very, like, you know, delicate when it comes to Neville. Like, he does a good job.
Well, actually, Flitwick's lessons might be pretty good. We don't get very detailed explanations of them. Sorry, not explanations. Descriptions of them, as we do for the ones that you just mentioned. But I think from kind of secondhand descriptions, it sounds like he's a pretty good teacher. And he's more from the more kind of relaxed, practical school of thought.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, we don't know, like, it seems like most of his lesson plans are just like, this is the spell, let's practice the spell. So it's not like there's, as far as I can tell, there's not like a whole lot more, you know, inventive, creative things, but he seems like a chill person and people have fun in his class and stuff like that. So in that way, you know, yeah, people are more excited to learn in charms than they might be in a different class. But I'm not sure in terms of like interesting lesson plans. I think, yeah, Lupin and Slughorn.
I'm not really sure we hear enough about charms to tell for sure.
Well, mostly what we hear is like the trio chatting in charms as they do their spells.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, so the one charms lesson we see where, like, we see him actually teaching is the Wingardium Leviosa lesson, right? In Sorcerer's Stone. And there, like, Flitwick seems to do a good job. He, like, explains, like, here's the theory, here's what you want to do, here's what you don't want to do, like, move your wand like so, all right, everybody try. So I think that's sort of his style.
I think for the other ones, we mostly just see the part of the class where everybody try and not the start.
But, you know, this chapter is interesting when it comes to pedagogy.
Yeah, it's a shame Sam isn't here, the other Sam, since he's a teacher.
Yeah.
He could probably add his perspective.
Yeah. Sam, as our substitute Sam, do you have any thoughts about Slughorn's teaching style?
I agree with everything, that he's a much better teacher than Snape. I find him more engaging, and I feel comfortable asking questions in his class. With Snape, never.
In fairness, we do hear Parvati asking a question in Snape's class. So, like, it can be done.
She's a very brave girl to do that.
She's a Gryffindor for a reason. I would not do that.
Yeah, I'd be like, you know what, I'm a read up on my own time. All right, so we see their lessons, and let's just take a minute to talk about Draco, and the Malfoys. So, this chapter, we get our one and only canonical mention of Abraxas Malfoy, Lucius's father, who apparently has died of dragonpox at a very advanced age. And, like, it's one of those cases, like, I'd love to know more about Abraxas Malfoy. Like, I'd love to know sort of, you know, how Lucius grew up, what his relationship to his father was. Like, I would love to know more.
Yeah.
But the other thing that came to my mind was Draco's reaction when Harry turns out to be amazing at potions. Like, Draco must be even more flabbergasted than, like, anyone else there, because he literally walked in on Harry taking remedial potions with Snape half a year ago.
Harry improved so much in remedial potions.
Snape worked miracles in those individual lessons.
Yeah.
So according to the Harry Potter lexicon, Abraxas Malfoy was a wizard who was believed to be involved in a plot which led to the first Muggle-born Minister of Magic. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I just read.
That's from Pottermore.
Yeah, that's from Pottermore.
Okay, all right.
That checks out.
I hadn't thought of that remedial potions thing. That's really funny.
Right?
Maybe assume Slughorn takes teas now. Trolls.
Yeah, I wonder if he asked Snape that. Probably not, because he's no longer, like, friendly with Snape, but he would just see him coming up to Snape being like, what did you do in that remedial potions class?
Yeah.
Maybe he's just a very good tutor. He's just bad with a big class of people.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
If Draco and Snape were on good terms this year, then I believe that Snape would have caught Harry in the whole Half-Blood Prince textbook thing much earlier.
Yeah.
Like, every potions class, Draco would have been going to Snape and being like, can you believe this? Like, for some reason, he, like, added this thing, and his potion was perfect, and Snape would be like, huh!
When my father gets out of Azkaban and hears about this... that we are getting bad instructions in potions class, and Potter is just, you know, flattening his Sopophorus beans. Yeah. So actually, I'm curious, because they have a bit of a debate about whether, like, using the textbook is cheating or not. Where Hermione is like, well, it wasn't your own work. And Ron is like, I mean, he just followed instructions and a different set of instructions. So where do you guys come down on this?
I'm with Ron. It's not cheating.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm with Ron. It's not cheating. I'm agreeing with Ron way too much today. This doesn't feel right.
I don't think that's cheating either.
Yeah, I don't think it's cheating, but it is kind of like, considering that he, like, kind of continues to do that throughout the year and never, like, it's more like academic integrity than, like, full-on cheating, of, like, not citing his sources, but it's not right. It's like he's not citing his sources, but it's not wrong that he's using a different source. Like, if you were, like, in a cooking competition, or I don't know, and, like, you use a recipe that's different than someone, like, I don't know, like, if it's like a recipe, it's like he uses a different recipe and he gets different results, like, and they're better. That doesn't seem wrong to me, but there is a little bit of, like, is it fair that he has that and other people don't? Is it fair that he doesn't tell Slughorn that he's getting it from a different place? And also, in terms of, like, Snape did all of this work, and Harry's taking credit for it, and not citing his source, like, is that fair? So, like, I think there are ethical questions here, but I think coming right down to it, I don't really think it's cheating.
Yeah, I think where it becomes ethically problematic is when, you know, he does it, which I don't think it's cheating. But then when Slughorn thinks that Harry just made this perfect potion just by following instructions in the book, when he doesn't then say anything, then it becomes problematic. Because if you just said, oh, yeah, in that book that you loaned me, Professor, it said this thing about the Sopophorus bean, and I tried it, and it worked really well. I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But he did say that, and he kind of let Slughorn think that he's some kind of a genius at potions. And that's not great.
Yeah. But I'd say, like, I'd say there are ethical questions here, but I think it's like, okay, there are lots of things like this if we think about the real world in terms of, okay, some people when they're in school, their parents can afford to get them math tutoring, for example. And maybe this math tutor has a different way of explaining this math content that really just works for you and makes sense, or like gives you some tips or tricks, and you just get a lot of extra attention and you're doing really well in math class. And you're not required to ever tell anyone that you're taking math tutoring. And it's not fair, technically, that like some people can afford to have tutoring and some people can't, but it is sort of the reality that we accept, that it's not everyone gets exactly the same resources as other people, and that's just part of the world. Yeah, that's not cheating. Mm-hmm. I'd say, like, yeah, Snape would be furious that his like intellectual property is sort of being stolen in a way. So that I think is like an interesting question of like intellectual property, which is like a bit different than cheating in a way. But I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I guess Snape's problem is that he didn't register the intellectual property. Like,
you should have written the book.
Yeah. I mean, or even patented it. Like, I don't know if there's like, a wizarding equivalent of the patent office, but it being like, listen, I have a better way of doing this potion.
True.
Like, FYI.
But you don't need to...
But
if we think of it like plagiarism, like, you don't need to register intellectual property for someone to be required to, like, cite a source. So, like, if we think of it like that, it's like Harry doesn't cite the source. It would be fine if he said, oh, yeah, I got this from this book that has different, a different way of doing things. But since he didn't, like, that's sort of the way that I would maybe look at it.
But I think it's not an exact analog, because you cite your sources when you're writing something. Like, I feel like if Harry used the prince's notes, like, in his papers that he did for homework, that would be where he needs to cite his sources. That's copyright infringement. If he's just using instructions to do something, if it's a way of doing something, then that's patent. That's like, ideas for things and processes.
Sure, that's
and
true.
That does need to be registered.
That's true. But I'm sure he uses the prince's book when he's writing essays for potions.
Yes, and I think for me that would come off as more ethically compromised than just making potions.
That's totally
out of
true.
it.
Like, okay, let's say I'm making if I'm making dinner for you guys and I use a recipe online and then you guys are like, oh my God, this dinner is so great, I don't have to be like, oh, well, I got the recipe from X, Y, and Z place, I need to cite my source. That's not necessary. I mean, it's...
Right, you'll be like, it just came to
like,
me.
And like, I would think it'd be like a little bit ethically questionable if I was just like, oh yeah, I just thought of this myself to add these different ingredients, and if I didn't, but like, it's not... I mean, people lie like that all the time. Like, it's not like a huge deal. But this is a classroom, so it's a little bit different. But also, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that big deal overall.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like, sort of, once you get into the weeds, because, like, like, we're huge on citing sources here. Like, at 3 Broomsticks, we always love to cite everything. That's why we have a whole recommended reading section. But yeah, this is a little different. So Ginny shows up at the end of the chapter. We promised you a little appearance, and so here it is. And she makes explicit the connection between advanced potion making and Tom Riddle's diary. Because, like, books 2 and 6, it's a ring. You have cursed books with an asshole writing in them. Like, they have a lot in common. And Ginny spells this out, which I like. I feel like, it's a tiny bit of Joe being like, look, do you guys see the connection? Do you see what we're doing here? And then, like, 98% just, like, development for Ginny's character.
Yeah. And at least as a 9-year-old reading this book, it actually served as a red herring for me, because I then was like, oh, Voldemort is the one writing in this book. I'm like, he's a half-blood. Then they find out that the book was like from 50 years ago, and Tom Riddle's diary was from 50 years ago. And I was just like, it's Voldemort. So that was my prediction. I don't know if it was meant as a red herring, but it worked for me as a kid.
I don't think it was, because Jo announced, when she announced the title of Half-Blood Prince, that the Half-Blood Prince isn't Harry, isn't Voldemort, isn't Tom Riddle.
Okay, well then, I, as a kid not reading the announcements, was maybe the only one who fell for
fair
it.
enough, yeah.
And I mean, Ginny does have a point, because Harry does get careless, and he does
and emotionally invested. If we're using Tom Riddle's phrasing, where like she began to pour a little bit of herself into me, like we could say Harry is pouring a bit of himself into the potions book.
Yeah, and for once he is interested in the subject. It's a shame that this is what it took.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does end up using an untested spell with disastrous results, so he should have listened to Ginny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's actually very understanding when that happens, and I wonder if it's because she knows that she, has made a similar mistake.
Yeah. Well, and I love when Ginny brings up the diary stuff. Like, she did it in Order of the Phoenix, where she's like, well, like, if you need someone who's been possessed by Voldemort, hi. And here too. And I think it's great because, like, she's clearly handled it. Like, she's come out the other side, like, just fine, seemingly no worse for the wear. But it's these little moments that remind you that, like, this did make an impression, and this stuff does stick in her mind, and like she is occasionally I guess we would say triggered.
Yeah, which just feels so realistic. Like sometimes in books it'll be like, oh, whatever happened last year in our big adventure, like we don't think about that anymore, like except as just like, oh, that happened. But that these things do like really affect people's personalities, and people hold on to them. And I appreciate that in these books in general, that like Harry is affected by like the tragedies that happen throughout the books, and like we see at the beginning of each book sort of how that has changed who he is, and we see that with Ginny too.
Yes, I imagine Ginny never trusted a book again, never read a book again.
None of the self-writing books anyway. Regular kind. She probably, every time she buys a book, she probably like does the Revelio spell or something. Just to double check that it's just a book.
Or just she will write in it being like, hi, I'm a close friend of Harry Potter's. What's your name?
All of her
and if
textbooks.
It doesn't write back, then she's like, okay. Good. Yes, every single one of her textbooks has that written in it.
Good thing that Ginny is the last in her family, or else like whatever sibling came next would be like, what the
I'm sure there's some kind of erase ink charm or something.
But yeah, so that's the chapter. And it really is just like a wonderful, like, cozy little slice of life. And so at the beginning, we mentioned all the comparisons to the beginning of Order of the Phoenix. So I just have a couple, quick hits for comparing and contrasting them. So in both this and in the start of Order of the Phoenix, we get Harry getting detention from the Defense Against Dark Arts professor for losing his temper in class. However, this time, Dumbledore gets him out of the detention. This time, the trio is happy, friendly, like, living their best lives, like, having a bit of a disagreement about the potions textbook, versus in Order of Phoenix, like, it was just all bickering all the time. And, of course, like, sort of most obviously here, like, we get a really good potions lesson that Harry excels at, versus in Order of the Phoenix, it's like Snape's usual nonsense that, ends in disaster.
Yeah, it's a very positive kind of beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good example of why I like Half-Blood Prince so much, and specifically so much more than Order of the Phoenix. It's just, like, it's positive, it's happy, like, it's good vibes all around.
It's true.
Well, until it's not, but...
I mean, you know, you get a little bit of death and despair at the end. Like,
Just
that
a
can't
tiny
be
bit.
avoided.
No, but it is like
Yeah.
Half-Blood Prince is like my go-to like cozy reading Harry Potter book, which is so weird because it's like late in the series, it's like they're in the war, but that one to me just like feels very cozy.
Mm-hmm.
So, this chapter was sponsored by Flourish and Blots. Order your fresh, unmarked books by Owlpost at competitive prices. Or just use the one that your teacher gave you, whatever.
Yeah. And again, when you get the book, just write in it, I'm a friend of Harry Potter's, what's your name? Just to check.
Yeah, just to double check. Or like, you know, those pens that you can use to check if the if money is genuine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One of those like enchanted pen to check if it's like possessed book.
Yeah. I feel like there's a whole cottage industry in the Wizarding world of finding out if your book is possessed.
Only $19.99.
Well, and once you have your cozy book, me tell you what's playing at the pub's jukebox today. So the song for today, in reference to the potion that took center stage for much of the chapter, is Amortentia by Swish and Flick. This song is fondly known in my circle of friends as the lap dance song.
Wow, okay.
In no small part due to actions undertaken by me. But yes, it's a great song, so give it a listen.
I drink from your cauldron of hot, strong love, and in an instant, it's you I'm thinking of. As I take a sip, I breathe in your scent. It's the smell of you, richly decadent. Your essence fills my head, penetrates me deep. I've got you on my mind, even when I sleep. Each night I'm plagued with dreams, I don't know what it means. Wake up, I'm soaking wet. Wake up in a cold sweat. I know I'll never rest until I make you mine. It's for you I bleed, it's for you I pine. I can taste your love, Amortentia. Fill me with your love, Amortentia. I can feel your love, Amortentia. Fill me with your love, Amortentia.
So, thank you everyone for visiting the Three Broomsticks, especially our amazing guest, Sam. It was great having you. Thank you so much for coming. Would you like to add anything about where listeners can follow you, or if there's any content you want to share?
You can follow me on Instagram. It's my name, Sam Amin. I don't post much Harry Potter stuff over there. I'm trying to think of anything else. That's pretty much the only place I post mainly on is Instagram. It's mostly, unfortunately, running stuff. So sorry about that ahead.
Yes. Well, I've heard tell that our podcast is great company on a run.
Oh, yes, yeah. I'm so excited that I became a Patreon because I have so much on your Patreon content to listen to during my runs. My long runs, I listen to your podcast, and it distracts me from what I'm doing. And except the fact they're 2 hours really helps me out. Because I'm in the middle of training for a marathon right now.
Wow.
That's excellent. And again, huge thanks to you, Sam, for buying us this round of drinks at the Three Broomsticks. Listeners, if you want to buy us the next round and get access to all that fun Patreon content, you can go to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3 to sign up. And just as a sneak peek, so I was just in the UK and I visited Ev, and we did some escape rooms. So if you want to hear how that went, stay tuned to Patreon. And you can also help us out by rating and reviewing us all over the internet, and telling your friends. Word of mouth is a big help for us, and we appreciate it.
And if you want to find us on the internet, we are on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Our assorted handles and our email address can be found in the episode description or on our website. Our website is 3broomstickspod.com. That's with 3 spelled out. And that's where you will find any of the links to the essays we mentioned, where you can submit a topic and let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Yeah, tell us what Amortentia smells like.
Yeah, please do. It'll be really fun. And next time we meet at the 3 Broomsticks, we'll be discussing Law and Order in the Wizarding World. The concept, not the TV show.
Well, I can't wait.
Just to be clear, that is not a crossover we have on the docket.
Not yet.
Listeners, if you want a Law and Order crossover episode, do let us know. I can't promise that any of us watch Law and Order enough to do that, but
I think we will need a dedicated guest to run that episode for us.
Listeners, for you, we will watch Law and Order if you really want us to.
Law and Order SVU is a better one.
Wait, Sam, do you watch Law and Order?
I watch Law and Order SVU.
Okay, great. Sam's going to be our guest. Good, we have it all figured out.
Sorted, we're all sorted. Okay, so today I've been Ev.
I'm Sophia.
And every day I'm Irvin. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time at the 3 Broomsticks. Cheers!
Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butterbeer.
This episode of The 3 Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by the Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Ev, do we have an episode sponsor?
Oh, sorry, you were referring to me. I thought you just had a cough.
So the textbook for the class is Confronting the Faceless. And I'm sorry, that is a stupid title. Why would you not call it Facing the Faceless? Huh? Did I lose my connection, or do all of you just like the title? I think I did lose my connection.
Have we lost
anyone
talking?
Is anyone talking?
Yeah.
Nope.
Hello?
Hello, yeah.
I was like, it's very quiet.
Hello?
No, we can't hear you, Irvin.
Ooh.
Hello?
Hello.
He's back.
He has
Dude,
returned.
I was talking about Confronting the Faceless, and I heard crickets, and I was like, I guess y'all really like that title, and I'm in the wrong. Yes, I'm gonna say my laptop doesn't like the heat, because neither do I.
Fair.